and I'm here to introduce you to Roger Rule, author of The Rifleman's Rifle, and host of this series of episodes, Special Guns with Roger Rule.
Thank you, Virginia, and welcome. Welcome, viewers, to my 16th episode of Special Guns with Roger Rule.
What type of gun do we have today?
In the last few episodes, we have been featuring mostly shotguns. In the evolution of the over and under, we've covered 4 successful models. In the last episode, it was the great Beretta SO sidelock over and under. Today, we're going to look at a new innovation in the evolution of actions of the over and unders. This is the great Perazzi MX-8, and the key innovation was a detachable trigger assembly.
When did you first learn about these?
Well, as a senior among us, first time I heard the word Perazzi, I was surprised. It was in the mid-'70s, maybe late 70s, and I was in California. I had my construction company, a development company going. It was booming, and I had hired a gentleman to be my warranty manager from Missouri, my home state. His name was Dan. I was doing a lot of shooting, going hunting out of state whenever time and circumstances permitted, and I was shooting at the local club, which was an NRA-affiliated club, the Modesto Rifle Club, but unfortunately it didn't have anything to do with shotguns, no skeet, no trap, no sporting glaze. And I did have my Model 70 collection going at the time. One day, a subcontractor was in my reception area talking to me, business, and then we turned it into sort of chatting, and in the door walks Dan, my warranty manager, and he was listening to us, and the subcontractor knew I was into guns, so he asked me what I would think was the best shotgun for shooting clay pigeons. And I had to think for a minute because it had been a while. And while I was thinking about that, Dan, he opened his mouth and said, Perazzi. And I said, Perazzi? What's that? I'd never even heard of it. It'd been a long time since probably a decade since I'd shot my Winchester 101 and my Remington 1100. I knew back then that the top tier guns were Krieghoff and Beretta and Browning, but I'd never heard of Perazzi. My subcontractor asked me, he said, is he right? Meaning Dan. And I said, I don't know, but he usually knows what he's talking about. I just haven't been around shotguns at all for 10 years at least. And Dan said, well, there's some fellow won the 1964 Olympics gold medal with a Perazzi, and then it took off in 1968 Mexico Olympics. There were a lot of Perazzis being shot there too. But he also said, if you want one, there's a long waiting list, and even if you have the $3,000 it takes to buy it. This is in a long time ago.
Yeah, you said this was in the 70s?
Yes, it was. In fact, if I think about it, it was probably, Dan worked for me in the late 70s. But anyway, before we look at one of these guns, let's first take a brief look at Perazzi, the company. At 6 years of age, Daniele Perazzi was introduced to firearms by his uncle. At 14, Daniele was hired by a local gunsmith. He was often noticed running errands around town on his bicycle. At first, working just as an errand boy, he eventually served a 6-year apprenticeship at a local gun concern, completed it, and at the age of 20, Perazzi began working on his own, building premium sidelock shotguns, capitalizing on his previous experience from his apprenticeship. In his first year of business, he invented and patented a single trigger design that his company manufactured for the gun trade, selling to others, and becoming a commercial success. At the age of 25, in 1957, Perazzi established Perazzi Arms in Brescia, Italy. 3 years later, in 1960, Perazzi met a young automotive engineer who worked at Fiat by the name of Ivo Fabri. If that doesn't ring a bell, it soon will. Perazzi and Fabri joined together to research new procedures for building shotguns. Their goal was to create a high-end, yet affordable shotgun. We are told that they were inspired by the over and under British makers, especially Boss and Woodward, the latter of which was purchased by Purdy. These are over and unders made by hand with extravagant prices. Perazzi and Fabry believed they could create such high-end firearms, but at a price that would be affordable to most Italians. Their goals were consistent with the times, as there was an optimism in 1960 Italy. The Summer Olympics Games in Rome that year were the first Olympics covered by television, and inflation was in decline. The Italian shooting star Ennio Mattarelli gave Perazzi and Fabry an assignment to render a trap gun for the 1964 Tokyo Olympics that would meet his specifications. Mr. Mattarelli had attained his success with a Belgian-made Browning. When the new Perazzi gun was finished, Mattarelli established a new Olympic and world record of 198 out of 200 that won him the gold medal in Tokyo Olympics of 1964. A year later, 1965, Perazzi and Fabry dissolved their partnership. Ivo Fabry sold back his shares and started a company under his own name, Fabry Arms, to develop extraordinary pigeon guns that may be the highest priced shotguns in the world. With Fabry's departure, Mattarelli became a partner in Perazzi. The new duo set their sights on the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, vowing to build a gun to enable Ennio Mattarelli to defend his title. The project gun was developed with the designation MX-8 for Mexico City 1968. They continued designing and building innovative competition trap and skeet guns, refining the Perazzi gun, which would result in MX-8 prototypes. The design objectives for the new shotgun were balance, precision, and strength. The new gun was built specifically for the shooting conditions in Mexico City. Because of the hotter climate, the gun had to have a higher rib. And because the rib was higher, the comb of the stock was raised. Making these changes had another positive effect. By raising the stock, it lowered the placement of the stock on the shoulder, which resulted in the recoil being directed horizontally back into the shooter versus getting the normal muzzle jump. Although the 1968 gold medal eluded Mattarelli, by the late 1960s, Perazzi had become a revered name in Europe for state-of-the-art shotguns. Here's a little tidbit. Perazzi claims the MX-8 is also the first gun to have interchangeable screw-in chokes in the lower or under barrel. That feature is now found on nearly all new guns. But the major feature of the MX-8 was the revolutionary detachable trigger assembly with V-springs. Perazzi preferred V-springs over the traditional coil springs because of their better trigger pulls. The drawback of V-springs is their unreliability. They break without warning. When they become worn, they break. Coil springs wear down slowly with age. However, with the easy access trigger assembly in the Perazzi, changing the V-springs can be carried out quickly and easily by the shooter if the parts are kept on hand as backups. Another new feature of the Perazzi MX-8 was the slanted hammers, which reduced misfires significantly. For their barrels, Perazzi used deep drilling instead of more common hammer forging. Their thinking was that hammer forging causes a higher level of molecular distortion than deep drilling does, impacting barrel regulation and recoil. The recoil of the MX-8 is described as round instead of linear impact usually felt. But it's the Perazzi's mechanical trigger with its 3.5 pounds of pull that became the benchmark in the industry. The gun's gold medal winners have described the performance of the MX-8, saying the receiver is compact and low. Its profile is low with a central axis for quick swings, or in a word, agile.
If Perazzi is such a young company, is the founder still alive today?
No, sadly, just seems like recently to me, Daniele Perazzi died in November 7th, 2012. He left the company in the hands of his son Mauro and his daughter Roberta, who have taken over the business of Perazzi Arms. A list of Olympic medals, gold, silver, and bronze, won by shooters using Perazzi Arms had become voluminous since Ennio Montarelli won the first gold in 1964 Tokyo. In the 4 Olympics prior to 2016, Perazzi shooters had won 14 gold medals, 11 silver medals, and 13 bronze medals, for a total of 38 Olympic medals, and that didn't count this year, or this new one. In the 2016 Olympics, Californian Kimberly Rode earned a place in the history books as the first American to win a medal in 6 consecutive Olympics when she took gold in women's skeet in Rio de Janeiro with her Perazzi. Ms. Rode was quoted as saying, and I have it here, "I've never had a reliability problem with Perazzi. I've shot about 3 million rounds and I've never had one break, and that's through 3 guns. The barrels and triggers have never worn out. The receiver is rugged too," close quote. But I do have another quote from her, quoting, "Perazzi's handle real nice. They're fast to target and well balanced. They make the guns to fit you like a glove. The combination is incredible," close quote. And the Blue Book of Gun Values states, and I'm quoting this too, "Perazzi shotguns are well known for their quality control standards and reliability in clay target championships and in field conditions," close quote. According to the company, they market what they call the Perazzi Experience, which is a procedure a customer goes through if he purchases one of their shotguns from the factory in Brescia, Italy. Other English makers have a similar procedure. The customer tries out a test gun to determine the correct fit and measurements of the custom stock that's going to be custom ordered. Then there's a list of custom options, including the blank and grade of wood, and for both the stock and the forearm, the barrel length, the rib height and width, the trigger group, and receiver engraving. The customer can watch his gun being made, as there is a public viewing area in shotgun production. And if that's not custom enough, customers who are at the factory can have the option of visiting a nearby Perazzi family restaurant for pasta and wine.
That sounds like more fun than actually just ordering a gun.
Maybe not for a gun guy. The gun of the day today is a Perazzi MX-8 in high grade SC-3 grade with 29.5-inch barrels.
Is this one 12 gauge?
Yes, it's 12 gauge with 3-inch chambers, and it includes a set of 7 Briley thin wall chokes. It would be described as a sporting clays gun because of the field configuration.
That's 24. That's 25. You got a perfect round.
Before we disassemble this beautiful gun and examine its major components at the sideboard, I want to first demonstrate the removable, how the removable famous trigger assembly comes out. And this is what Perazzi's renowned for. There are some videos on YouTube on this. Often a new gun like this is stiff and hard to remove. However, if it's not so tight and stiff, it's a simple procedure. You simply slide the safety button forward toward the top lever and pull the back of the trigger assembly down as you feel it coming free. I'm going to demonstrate that. Okay, this is the trigger assembly. Voila. Now looking at trigger assembly, note this one has the coil springs, which are more durable than the V-springs. although the Olympic people seem to want the V-springs. To finish disassembling the gun, like most other shotguns, we release the forearm first with the Anson and Dealey lever latch, then separate the barrels holding the top lever to the right, and that separates the gun. Now we'll move over to the sideboard and examine the major components for the camera. This Perazzi MX-8 in SC-3 grade comes with a heavy-duty molded case made by Negrini for Perazzi, with the name Perazzi in relief on the lid, trimmed with brown faux leather with 3 combination locks. The interior has compartments molded to fit the components of the gun with a dark gray velour lining. Accessories include Briley chokes and a choke wrench, the long red-handled hex drive screwdriver for removing the stock. It's marked Perazzi on the shank, separating the forearm from the barrels. Well, let's look at the forearm first. The one-piece forearm shows the serial number stamped twice inside, once into the wood and once into the forearm iron. The forearm iron is blued and engraved, and we can see the intricate fittings to make which couple up to the action. Looking at the barrels, first we see what would be the barrel flat as a block, similar to Beretta SO. The locking lugs are on the sides, 2 on each side. We see the cutout for the hinge pins and the automatic ejectors. On the barrel block there's a serial number and 2 Gardone and Brescia proof marks and a single Gardone proof mark. There is an N on the left lug. On the bottom of the lower barrel we see 1270, indicating 12 gauge and 70 millimeter chambers, or 2 3/4 inch. And on the lower left side of the barrels, of both barrels, we see proof marks. These were proofed at 18.4 tons with the inscription GAM 70, again for the chamber length, stamped on the top barrel, and KG1 520 stamped on the lower barrel. On the right side of the barrels there are no markings. We locate the, looking down on the underside of the barrels, we locate the locking lug for the forearm release. Also notice that the rib separating the 2 barrels doesn't begin for about 10 inches from the action, space hidden by the forearm when it's assembled. The matted rib has a recessed center track that's finished with a finer matting than the 2 higher surfaces on each side of it. We haven't seen another rib treated like this. It must be a nice aid for target shooting. Looking at the stock and receiver, the top or ledge of the receiver walls, inscribed on the right with the serial number, and on the left with SC-3 for the grade. If we move the top lever too far to the right, it will lock up. It can be unlocked by pressing a little relief button located high on the right side of the breech face. Curiously, on a gun of this quality, the strikers are not bushed. We can see the locking bolts in the breech face down here that catch the rear barrel lugs just under the ejectors. Looking at the inside of the receiver, we find the locking lugs on both left and right sides of the hinge pins. Gardone and Brescia proof marks are on the right side of the water table. As a safety check, I'll first open the gun to see it's unloaded. Well, we see our snap caps, but I always check them anyway because they look kind of like cartridges and shotgun shells. It is unloaded. Looking at the metal first, it has 29.5-inch over and under barrels. These have a tram line hand-filed ventilated rib with a recessed center track, as we've already discussed, with an ivory bead. They're separated with a ventilated rib as well, about down to within 6 inches of the muzzle. The receiver of the action has a fancy back, and it's coin finished, which contrasts nicely with the blue parts, which include the barrels, the trigger guard, the trigger assembly under the trigger, the safety button, the top lever, forearm iron, and the Anson Dealey release. The trigger is gold, and the word safe is gold filled. See that on the close-up. It has a selective single trigger for this detachable trigger assembly. The selector for the trigger is a small button behind the trigger that operates low room, left over, right under. When pushed to the left, the over barrel is selected. Pushed to the right, the under barrel is selected. However, the Perazzi has a weird idiosyncrasy about this selective trigger. Before you change it, you must put it on safe first. You don't have to do that with Berettas. The ejectors are automatic. The safety is manual, which is the preferred choice for pigeon target shooting. Looking at the inscriptions, other than the word safe, the only inscription on the exterior of the gun is on the left receiver. Actually, it's on the barrel portion, which is inscribed Perazzi, Brescia, made in Italy. The engraving is called Bulino style engraving, and it's a shallow style as opposed to deep relief, but it's more artistic in that it resembles quality photographs. Yeah, Virginia, can you see that?
Yeah. The engraving's not as deep, but it's still, the images still look really real.
The right side of the receiver shows a quail taking flight from a ravine. The left side has a wood duck in flight near a tree with other shrubbery. And the bottom, I'm going to hit you one of the receiver, or the underside, has a mallard landing on a lake scene. All three of these and the balance of the action parts are surrounded with full coverage engraving in the arabesque leaves. This includes the trigger guard assembly, the top lever, the safety button, and the forearm release, all engraved. Examining the stock, we first notice that it's a fancy grade made from beautiful French walnut with the almost cordovan brown color evenly spread with black streaks.
This kind of looks like the burgundy one, the burgundy colors.
The Arizabalaca, yes. This is a little darker with a little more predominant streaks, but maybe even a little fancier than that one. But like the Arizabalaca, the fancy figure of this one is consistent on both stock and forearm and on both profiles. The shape of the stock has a classic comb. It's fluted, has a large pistol grip. There is no pistol grip cap, and the pistol grip contours in with the toe line of the stock, which is a nice design. There are two panels on the stock, one on each side, that work nicely with the fancy back and the shape. There are no teardrops. The stock is finished with a 3/4 inch dark brown leather covered recoil pad, and the overall length of pull is 14.5 inches. The forearm is called a field forearm, slender, and it ends with a nice truncated curve that parallels the curve at the knuckle where the forearm meets the front of the receiver. Checkering on the pistol grip is point pattern and comprises two panels which would be independent of each other, except for their top borders meeting at a V over the wrist. The forearm checkering follows the same style, 2-point patterns that come together on the underside, forward of the forearm release, and with a V about 1 inch forward of the forearm iron. This creates a pleasing diamond shape of uncheckered wood surrounding the forearm release. Checkering is 24 lines per inch and surrounded with double borders. Finish is glossy but not high gloss. I'm going to set the gun down. For a target gun, the wood to metal fits fine. For what is supposed to be an upgrade, this SC-3 model, the wood is evenly proud on both sides and on the underside of the action, and likewise evenly proud around the forearm iron. The upper tang is the only place where the wood to metal fit is tight.
Do we know how much this gun costs if it's new?
According to the 34th edition of the Blue Book of Gun Values, the MSRP for the new one with the SC-3 grade was about $16,700. I don't know exactly what that would include as far as options. Finally, although Perazzi now offers a wide variety of models and combinations, trap, skeet, and sporting configurations in all grades and prices, it is the MX-8 that will be the definitive shotgun to best understand Daniele Perazzi, and it will always be this gun that is his legacy. So, that winds up our episode today. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, viewers, for watching. And if you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to share with others and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I hope you join us next week for another episode of Special Guns with Roger Rule. We'll be looking at a couple of cool rifles. If you want to get involved with these types of guns, I recommend gunsinternational.com. The owners are great people. I know them and have been using their website since they started. I find it the best source for both buying and selling any great collectible gun.